Wes tu hal min friend and welcome to yet another video, and of course we are back, my dear friends, to review the House of the Dragon finale, the last episode of the first season, and all that we can do right now is to wait for the second season, or, should you wish, reread the Fire and Blood book that came out in 2018 and was the basis for this particular TV show. But first, my dear friends, welcome, and those of you who are here for the first time, welcome to European Lore channel of a humble European fella who likes to rant about fantasy on the internet, a man who has devoted his both personal and academic life to the greats of the fantasy genre of the 20th century, as well as Old English literature and language, and that is why this channel is from a huge part devoted to defending these great works of art against such vile creatures as, well, people in modern Hollywood, of course. So feel free to check out my other videos, such as the individual reviews of the episodes of The Rings of Power, which, of course, we know that it is an abhorrent show, 100% constructed material, and something completely different from House of the Dragon, which I have been thoroughly enjoying. So, you will know that there are bright gems, my dear friends, in today's entertainment industry, and among films and TV shows and adaptations over and over again, and prequels and sequels and spin-offs and remakes, yada yada yada, that are all just focusing on bowing to the gods of inclusion, representation and diversity, and are not focusing first and foremost and primarily on, making a good product or staying faithful to the source material. Well, of course, House of the Dragon is a completely different beast, because I do consider it a fairly decent adaptation of the book, which of course is not a novel per se that would be narrated in a traditional style, really. It is a chronicle-like book, more akin, not specifically, but if you want to compare, for example, House of the Dragon to, well, the abhorrent Rings of Power, you could say that they had a similar basis, whereas the Rings of Power, they were only able to adapt the appendices to the Lord of the Rings. Well, the House of the Dragon then adapted Fire and Blood, which is a chronicle-like book composed of writings and notes and chronicles written by various maesters and historians, and even a jokester from time to time. So we could say that it has got an unreliable narrator. It often happens in the book that there are a couple of versions of how the events revolve and what happened to the individual characters. But I would say that this particular episode is the most faithful to the source material. And of course, it concludes the introduction, really, to the huge civil war within the House of the Dragon, the House Targaryen. Now, this is a very interesting concept to make, basically to make one entire season an introduction to huge and awesome things that will happen in the future. In the second episode, I suppose, the big battles and the war and the struggles and so on and so forth. And I have to really give the props to the showrunners and to the screenwriters and to all the actors that they were not afraid to make this season a little bit less action-filled and make it a preparation for the second season, but at the same time make it very good, because at least myself, I wasn't bored watching the House of the Dragon. And even though I pointed out a change, an omission, an addition, a time shift from time to time, it is all, of course, done because this is an adaptation, and the adapting book into a film, of course, means that you have to change things from time to time. That are two completely different media. But then, of course, within the boundaries of common sense, not the way the bloody Prime Video did with The Rings of Power, which is, once again, just 100 constructed material, or 100% constructed material with just labeling the name The Lord of the Rings on it, and Tolkien's name. So then, of course, if we were to look at the episode itself, what I enjoyed was especially those bits and pieces that were taken straight from the book, like the fact that and yes, some people, that I have to say first, some people were not satisfied with yet another birth scene. And of course, it had been announced by the showrunners and by the executives of HBO and by the actors, so on and so forth, that this TV show will focus on the suffering of women in the feudal period, medieval period, yada yada yada, and that we will see a lot of birth scenes and see how women suffered truly and more than men and yada yada. We know it. Yeah. We all know it. And it was very much present in the season. But as far as this episode itself, the birth season at the beginning of the episode is described in detail in the book. And even in more detail, of course, than it was then depicted in the show. She was, I think, in labor for 3 days. The birth was, of course, caused by the bad news that came from King's Landing, that Aegon II was crowned the king, and he is the usurper after all, because she's the rightful heir to the throne, because she was appointed by her father to be his successor of King Luceris. So these bad news probably quickened up the birth, because she wasn't due to give birth yet. And it was described that the kid was horribly deformed, that it had a hole in the chest, I think, if I remember correctly in the book, and that it even had something like a scaled tail resembling a dragon, which was, nicely symbolic, because House of the Dragon, right? I also appreciated very much the inclusion of Vermithor, which is the big dragon that Daemon sang to, and that he went in the dungeons to search for. Well, there is, of course, a dragon that belonged to King Jaehaerys Targaryen, the old fella, the one who preceded King Viserys. And Vermithor, the dragon in question, is actually the second oldest dragon in the realm. So you could imagine what will happen in the future is like, They told us basically what will happen. Daemon went and sang to the dragon, and the dragon kind of got tamed by him. But we will get there, of course, in the second season. And there was, of course, which is one of the scenes that I appreciated the most, is the final scene. And of course, I should have said that earlier, but it will be in the title. Spoilers. This video is filled with spoilers. The final battle is not really a battle. The chase scene between Aemond and Luceris and their two dragons. Well, that, of course, is a direct adaptation of one of the versions of the events that were described in the book. Now, there were more versions, of course, in the show. We've got, so the war started because, of course, Aegon the second was crowned the king in the King's Landing in front of all the soldiers and men and the common people. He was given the crown of Aegon the Conqueror, or Aegon the First, and his sword. Is it called Blackfire? I think so. And so in the eyes of the common people, he is the legitimate heir to the throne. And then, of course, some letters were sent to Rhaenyra Targaryen in the show. Otto himself went there, and she refused, of course, to accept the terms, and she even responded, if I remember correctly in the book, that she responded to Aegon II, "I will have the throne, or I will have your head." So there you go. They made her... In the show, I observed that they made her a bit calmer, a bit tamer than she is in the books. But I think that the event that happened in the end of this season will change her into what she really is like then in the books, which is a bit less kind than in the show, which is, of course, only understandable. So then, of course, we've got the two fractions, the Greens and the Blacks, and all the lords and ladies from the Seven Kingdoms then choose their side. Of course, the Lannisters will go to the Greens, and it is also suggested that it was because The two brothers, the Lannister twins, were rejected by Rhaenyra when they courted her. So yeah, that's that's nice there. But of course, it's more or less 50-50, right? Divided between those two fractions, which of course then the Velaryons, they help a lot by choosing the Targaryen side of, the Rhaenyra, because they have the fleet, and they control basically the sea, and so that will then result in huge and awesome battles. But of course, they also have dragons. It's called Dance of the Dragons. So that's that. And I wanted to get to the point where Rhaenyra sends her sons to different lords and ladies to go to her side. And when there was the Luceris, when he went to the Baratheon lord, of course, he was rejected, as it happened in the show. So it happened in the book. And then, of course, there was this fight and struggle between him and Aemond. And then there was the dragon chase. And it was described that a lot of soldiers at the walls of the Storm's End were observing it. The fact that those two dragons met over the Shipbreakers Bay. And then there are 2 or 3 versions of the story. The first one was that, if I remember correctly, Luceris just fell into the sea, and then he forgot everything, and he got amnesia, and he lived for the rest of his life as a common fisherman. And the second, of course, was that he was swallowed whole by a Vermithor. Not Vermithor, that's the big dragon, by Aemon's dragon. So, of course, we've got this. And I like this usage of this particular version, because the body, of course, was never found of Luceris. So, he probably died. Because this was the last straw, and you can really see it. You can see the slow progression, and that is what I love about this show. It really had character development. All the characters went through trials and tribulations that, in the end, resulted in the changes to the characters. So Rhaenyra, for example, during this entire season, she never really knew, she never really was sure what she really wanted. Does she want to be the queen or not? Is she firm and strong and fierce, or is she kind? But slowly and gradually, due all of the things that happened to her, she changed into what she will be in the second season. And I think, and I know that the death of Luceris was the final straw for her. And that is something that I extremely enjoyed. Other than that, there were, of course, minor changes. None of them as big as the ending of the last of the 9th episode, when Rhaenys kind of annihilated the coronation room with the dragon and then flew away. It was a big change. But it can be forgiven, of course. Then there is all this small and little subplot, little sub-storyline with the prophecy and the long night and the dagger, which didn't really play any role in the source material, if I remember correctly. But it is also understandable in that they wanted to somehow at least connect Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. They could have omitted it, they could have not added it into that show. I think that people would have enjoyed the show anyway, but still, we can see that even HBO, they just tend to provide us with member berries and little notes and little lines from Game of Thrones and references to Game of Thrones, because everybody loved Game of Thrones at the time. The first 3 to 4 seasons, that is. The last season was of course, something that let many fans down. So the final thoughts are, it was a good show. I enjoyed it. I loved it. There was this, of course, change of the House Velaryon, which was a lot of people's gripes, but I have explained that it is really my smallest gripe, that at this point of time in entertainment industry, it can be forgiven because otherwise the show was very good, and that it wasn't really interfering with the plot or with the story, and that the Valarians were portrayed actually very good by the actors, especially Corlys then. And of course, I thoroughly enjoyed the actors who portrayed Viserys. So Paddy, what was his name? I'm blanking. I'm sure 1,000 of you will tell me in the comments down below. Then, of course, Matt Smith portraying Daemon Targaryen, and the first Rhaenyra, the young Rhaenyra. I'm still regretting that they changed her. I still prefer the young version of Rhaenyra Targaryen. I believe they could have made her a little bit older using makeup, but all right. The second older actress was good enough. She was okay. All right, and that will be all. I'm very much looking forward to the second season. My all-in-all feelings about the first season are very good. I enjoyed it. It was a very good adaptation, unlike almost everything else that is being done today. And I've actually decided to reread the Fire and Blood again, even though I have been flipping through it here and there, just to remind myself of different things while preparing for these reviews. And so all in all, I'm very much satisfied. And I even think I might get some merchandise. They had, for example, some nice sword replicas from this show. Those swords, they looked very good. All right, let me know in the comments down below what you think. And that will be all. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm out of here.